Hey, do you hear that?
Hear what?
Christ, Jesus. What is that?
Sounds like people screaming.
You get the stretchers. I'll get on the radio and phone this in.
Jerry?
Rescue 7, come in. This is dispatch. Do you copy over?
Come in dispatch. Send more paramedics.
This is Hellmouth from Send More Paramedics, and you're listening to Into the Unknown Radio. Keep it undead, mortals.
What is up, guys? Welcome to The Bands That Changed My Life, episode 2, with me, Dan P. This episode is focusing solely on one of my all-time favourite bands, Send More Paramedics. I originally came across the band back in April 2005. I picked up a copy of Metal Hammer magazine and threw on the free DVD that had come with it. It had some decent enough stuff on there: Converge, Anthrax, Martyr AD. But then I was approached the end of this Vaults of Horror DVD. Something made me sit up and take notice. It was a mix of the later era Misfits and the savagery of bands like Exodus and Slayer. One listen through and I was hooked. Highly infectious and catchy as fuck. One listen to Zombiecore and I've never looked back. The band themselves, part thrash, part punk, all crazy. Send More Paramedics clawed their way from the grave back in 2001 and were sent back to their deathless slumber in 2007. Formed by members of various post-hardcore and punk groups from Leeds at the time, the band went on to gain momentum as a leading light of the rabidly aggressive zombiecore and thrash genres, releasing the now infamous demo tape that scored them an almost instant record deal with In at the Deep End Records, followed by 2 split EPs 3 full-length albums, and a final cassette-only compilation release for you collectors out there. On this episode, I have 3 of the 4 from the band talking about their memories from that time and talking about what the future holds. Plus my phone conversation with the head of In at the Deep End Records, Mark Swinney, about his time working with the band, not to mention my picks from the band's discography, so prepare to thrash like an undead maniac.
Hi, this is Sam from More Paramedics, aka Hellmouth.
Hi, my name is Stuart Dobbins. I used to be known as, and still am in certain circles, as El Diablo. I was the drummer, the one in the mask for most of the time, although I binned that off towards the end because it was a complete nightmare.
Right, with the introductions done, I'm going to jump straight into the questions. So, going back to your musical beginnings, what are your memories of how More Paramedics came to be?
Duncan, who is the guitar player, Medico, and I played in bands from about the age of 15, I think, back in Norwich, where we lived. We were in a band in the mid-90s called Smurf Tribe, of all things. We basically ended up in Leeds together. Sam was from Norwich as well. Sam was in a band in Norwich at the time. Those guys went to university in Leeds. I didn't have anything to do, so I came up to Leeds as well, and we started making some music together and going to gigs. This was in about 1999-2000, when the Leeds punk, underground, hardcore, alternative, post-hardcore scene was booming. There was pretty much a gig on every night. All the bills were pretty eclectic. You know, you'd have a hardcore band on with a weird avant-garde jazz post-hardcore band with an emo band. So all that sort of thing was happening at the time. We actually formed a band, myself, Sam and Duncan, with a chap called Kev. We did None of Them Knew They Were Robots, and that was the sort of first proper band we did in Leeds that started to play some gigs and get around the place and do some gigs actually outside of Leeds as well. Whilst we were doing None of Them Knew They Were Robots, we hit upon the brilliant idea of doing a one-off band for Halloween 2001. This dates back to Norwich, to be honest, because Duncan and I would watch Return of the Living Dead at his house all the time. And remember us saying at the time, oh, we should do a band called Send More Paramedics, because that's what the zombie says down the CB radio in Return of the Living Dead. And I was like, yeah, we'll definitely do that. Oh, that's a brilliant name for a band. What will we sound like? And eventually we decided, it's got to sound like Slayer. So we thought, oh, well, and this was at the time that Halloween, which is now a pretty big thing in the UK, at the time wasn't really a big thing. We, liked all the sort of Halloween-ness of the American side of things. It was always a big deal there. You used to watch films like obviously Halloween and what have you that where a big deal was made out of it. So we thought, well, let's do something. Let's put a gig on, do a band. We'll call it Send More Paramedics. It'll be basically Return of the Living Dead themed. And what we'll do is we'll record a tape before we do it so that everybody's got the songs and everybody can basically listen to the songs, know the songs before you play, because you want to have a good time, you want to have a sing-along, you want to have a dance, you want to do whatever. So if you play hearing those songs for the first time, it's not going to be as much fun as if people already know the music, which is something we got from some hardcore scenes in America. I seem to remember the chap from Over My Dead Body, who Duncan was friends with, had said that that's what they'd done. They'd put together a tape before their first gig so people knew the songs and would get into it. So we did this tape and we recorded it in our basement on a 4-track and just started handing it out to people, just saying, here's a tape of the songs we're playing on Halloween. And there we go, and the rest was history. We basically did the gig, ran out of songs very quickly because we only had 5 songs and they're all pretty short, so we had to do all of the set again. So we played the set twice and we thought, oh, that's it. But then somebody said, oh, do you want to do another gig? We're like, don't be ridiculous. And then we went, all right, we'll do it. And then we did another gig, and then there you go, that's Send More Paramedics.
So talking about musical beginnings of the band, I'll give you the shortest possible version of a long story. Stuart and Duncan had a really good skate punk band in school. Like a lot of bands, we went to school together, most of us. They kind of mixed it up a lot. They did a lot of different styles, including ska, but a lot of other stuff. They were really good. And I was in a kind of lame, grungy punk band that used to support them. And yeah, I always wanted to be in a band with those guys. Eventually, it kind of evolved, and me and our friend Ben formed a band during uni time with Stuart and Duncan called Jelly Gun Jack. Yeah, we were kind of a skate punk band with a lot of ska going on. It was the late 90s, etc. And we did that for a bit during uni, and then that came to an end, and me, Stuart and Duncan ended up doing this post-hardcore band called None of Them Knew They Were Robots with our friend Kev. Started about 2000. That was cool, but during that, we were watching a lot of zombie films, and we kind of stumbled across thrash, which we hadn't massively known before. But I can remember hearing Slayer around the house of a guy called John Sutcliffe from a band called Canvas, among others. We started listening to that. I guess Duncan had been to California for a bit and seen a lot of straight-edge hardcore youth crew type bands. And I think he had the idea he wanted to start something like that, something where you could shout along with the chorus and so forth, get all your mates to sing along. And also, he quite fancied playing a bit of thrash because he got the chops. So we kind of started this band as a joke for Halloween. The formula was Slayer plus Minor Threat plus zombies. That was literally it. We did that on Halloween 2001. We kind of had a demo tape out ready so people would know the songs at the show. It was brilliant. And it was just total drunken fun. People, I guess, people liked it, so we kept doing it. That was that. 6 years. 6 years went by in the flash of an eye, and it rocked.
Why do you eat people?
Not people. Brains.
Brains only.
Yes.
Why?
The pain.
What about the pain?
The pain of being dead.
So what were the influences in making the music for some More Paramedics, and have they changed at all for you since the band dissolved?
It was Slayer when we started. It was like, can 4 idiots make something sound a bit like Slayer? And, fortunately, Duncan knows how to play guitar, so, we managed to cover that bit off. Really, it's just me going bum-tit as fast as I possibly could in the background. So, we wanted to sound like Slayer. Then I think as we got towards the second album, there was more thrash influences coming in at that point. There were things like Anthrax, Metallica, Megadeth, all that sort of thing. And then I think when we got to The Awakening, we were listening to a lot of things like Carcass. Obviously we didn't sound like Carcass, and had no intention of sounding like Carcass, but just that element whereby when Carcass did Heartwork and it was all very melodic, there's some riffs on there, things like Everything Is Not Under Control, which are kind of, slightly more bouncy, slightly more melodic sounding music, still with the aggressive vocals and that sort of thing on it. And we were lucky enough to have Jeff from Carcass do some vocals, Jeff and Ken from Carcass in fact, do some vocals on a couple of tracks on that record, so that was great. In terms of what's happened since the band dissolved, I listen to whatever's out there really. After some More Paramedics, I joined Gentleman's Pistols. I was introduced to a lot of 70s rock, new wave of British heavy metal, all that kind of thing. But also, when I was 15, 16 and playing in bands with Duncan back in Norwich, we'd listen to Miles Davis and Prince and people like that. And, I frequently go back to those people as well, because it reminds me of being a teenager, but also just the music is obviously incredible, and you can keep coming back to it and finding new things in it.
Influences of making the music for SMP. Well, speaking for myself, I have to put my hands up and say I'm a little bit of a musical tourist when it comes to heavy metal. And although the music did develop, if you listen to SMP, there's a lot of skate punk in there, which is basically the stuff that Stuart and Duncan and then me also grew up playing, all the kind of Fat Wreck, Epitaph type Californian skate punk. So that was a kind of very strong underlying influence, and the fast drums and the chugging guitar, I think it all comes from there to some degree, but then thrash just kind of takes that and pushes it further. So when we got into the thrash, we seized on Slayer. We already knew hardcore like Minor Threat and stuff. We started listening to stuff like Exodus, Creator, I can remember listening to all kinds of thrash. Martin would tell you something quite a lot different, because he's the only true metaler in the band, to be honest. He is a huge Metallica fan. He also loves what I see as tough guy, youth crew type hardcore. So that's his angle. But the rest of us were kind of coming out of skate punk and seizing on thrash as this progression of that in a way. In terms of my favourite stuff, I was kind of drawn maybe in the end to the more crossover type stuff anyway. Stuff like Anthrax, SOD, MOD, stuff that had a bit of a punky sort of feel in it, a bit of a skatey sort of feel. Yeah, but I talked to any of us. I mean, I didn't write the music. Talked to Duncan about whose guitar he was ripping off. I know he was ripping off Scott Ian a lot. Metallica, we had to say Metallica to keep Martin happy. So, Slayer and Minor Threat, really. And I don't know if you care about my musical tastes. I guess I really, since we stopped, I've gone back to kind of the stuff I used to like earlier. Kind of 90s alternative, 80s and 90s American punk stuff. Bands that have blown my mind in the last few years. Minutemen was one. Voivod was another. They're kind of like a thrash band, but they do progressive stuff. It's got those weird time changes in and everything that I quite like. So yeah, just kind of anything that's vaguely punk and vaguely interesting, even jazzy or progressive, I'm kind of into that.
Right, I've got an easy one next. What is your favourite SMP album or release and why? It's worth noting that we've got Duncan, aka Medico, present for this one. So, Duncan?
Well, perhaps the original tape demo. It kind of encapsulated so much of what we'd hoped to do, and at the same time as manifesting and validating our half-formed ambitions, the ideas that it captured hinted at a roadmap for the band's future in terms of projects and vision. And it was also really fun to record and put together. It was all total DIY, a group of friends, mostly in a mouldy basement. I was at law school at the time, and I remember using the library photocopier and scissors and glue to cobble together my artwork and layout for the cover and insert. I was consumed with creative ideas, but all the work and the countless decisions that went into that demo, it was without real effort, like we were frictionless in each other's creative slipstreams. And the Leeds music scene buoyed us along. It was utterly inspiring in its blend of influences and people. The spirit of that demo was raw, exploratory, exciting, and carefree.
In terms of my favourite SMP release, I scratched my head a little bit, but basically I think I have to go for the Awakening album, largely because it's the last album we did, and therefore I think our game had improved as we'd gone on. The sort of supplementary electronic CD that Duncan created is a cool aspect of it. The artwork was by Stefan Kopinski, who used to do art for Games Workshop, so that was a cool thing. And I think the music on there, the songs on there, there's some good variation, there's some different guitar stuff going on, there's some different tempos. Hopefully my vocals had progressed and become a little bit more varied. So yeah, I think that's our most accomplished record, fond though I am of all of it. If it wasn't The Awakening, then it would be the first demo tape, which started it all off, which we recorded in our basement in Leeds, and which was just great fun.
It's difficult to evaluate your own releases, I think. The one that sticks in my mind is the second album, Hallowed and the Heathen. The first one, Feast for the Fallen, was huge amounts of fun. It was just ridiculous that we were doing it, frankly. We just couldn't believe we were doing it. So it was all basically recorded. All the drums were done in a basement and just in people's bedrooms, and gang shouts in the bedroom and just all that kind of stuff. And that was huge amounts of fun. But Hallowed and the Heathen we actually did in a proper studio in Nottingham with Paul Heathen and the Moot Group. Now, it was that when it was like, oh, we're in a proper studio, and it sounds like we're in a proper studio. This is actually people who know what they're doing, making us sound almost like we know what we're doing. But around that time, it was just starting to sort of get a bit of attention. We were playing gigs where people would turn up in zombie makeup and zombie stuff. So we just thought, okay, right, well, things are starting to happen. Look, this will be a good time to put out a shiny sounding release, or as shiny as we had possibly conceived it at that point. So we wrote some songs. One of them was obviously Zombie Crew, which seemed to become the hit. And I just remember it just being a really good vibe at the time. It was like, we're making a record that is going to put a marker down to say, this isn't a fluke, we can actually do this properly and make something that's people are going to listen to and think, right, blimey, yeah, they are actually doing this. And that was in part because Paul and Johnny managed to make us sound good. But it was just, it was a great time. We were all hanging out together, having a laugh. Sam was recording all the vocals in full makeup in the studio, and it was just, it was one of those, it was just a great time. And I think the songs we wrote at that time were just all coming together. We were just all pulling in the same direction, and it was just, it was great fun.
I should like to inform you that the epidemic started with the burning of bodies.
Right, here comes the first generic and cliched question of the show, but fuck it, I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you have any cool or funny stories from the time on the road with the band over the 6 years it existed?
The thing is, the stories that are funniest and make me laugh, you probably have to be there. You have to know the people involved and have had to be there in the circumstance for it to be funny. Retelling them always sounds a bit drab. And besides, none of our stories are, in the realm of Ozzy Osbourne snorting a load of ants next to a swimming pool with Motley Crue or anything like that. There was no drugs or groupies or anything like that. I mean, really, at all. Most of it is extremely boring, and the funny things that happen are just the little stupid things. Obviously, you're in a band that wears makeup. Things sometimes go wrong. There was a time when Sam thought he'd brought a load of green makeup along, and it turns out that he'd actually brought gold. So everybody went on basically very shiny, very exotic, but it was good. So basically stuff like that, forgetting the makeup, bringing the wrong makeup, and that was it really. There was not much of sex and drugs and rock and roll. We were far too boring and dweeby for that. We just had a laugh together, and that was it. Being on the road in a van, or as we did one time on an actual tour bus together, was amazing. You with your friends, effectively being driven around the country to play this hokey thrash metal to a load of people who will ply you with lager. So why wouldn't you be enjoying yourself? So that's basically what we did, and it was fantastic.
Funny stories from time on the road. Most of them that spring to my mind seem to be at my expense and to involve alcohol and misbehaviour. So I'm going to say, in terms of cool stories, not necessarily on the road, another thing I was really proud of during the time we were doing it was the Halloween shows we used to have. Pretty much, I think every year we used to have a Halloween show. We used to make and photocopy flyers and this kind of thing, very DIY, very homemade. And a cool thing I like to remember is some of the stage props I used to make and some of the entrances that I used to make at those shows. So I had various rubber heads filled with polyfiller that I used to bring on stage with me, complete with holes that I would eat brains out of, the brains being made out of grapefruit and food colouring. There was some other cool, quite bad attempted special effects. Like one year I sewed a load of condoms full of coloured water onto the front of my t-shirt, so it was supposed to look like entrails falling out of my gut. Unfortunately, the water was heavy, and I guess the rubber was such that it just made these really big dangling balls that were swinging around in front of me as I came on stage, and it just looked terrible. So some cool idiot sort of makeup things. The time I sprayed hairspray over my head at the suggestion of Des Cadena to try and fix the makeup in place, and had an allergic reaction and had to feel my way to a local Boots from the gig venue to get some antihistamines so I could see and do the gig. I was carried on stage in a coffin at least once, which we borrowed from Hellraiser Records in Leeds. I was escorted at various times by zombie policemen, by zombie scientists in those kind of, toxic coverall things. I made a plywood coffin one year, which stood up on the stage and which I burst out of at the beginning. Quite a few sort of silly entrances that were made. That was fun. Not forgetting the time when we did one of our comeback shows, and I was trying to find something that would look like a barrel of 2,4,5 trioxin, and I ended up getting stuck inside a wheelie bin in my back garden in North London, and kind of was stuck there for about half an hour trying to climb out because no one was in. So quite a few funny stories to do with the staging and so on.
freakish watch the television. And yeah, my pride is full of blood. And blood of death. When it's like that, I'm bad at death. Zombified and squeakiest. Dobbins and
I had a chance to catch up with In at the Deep End Records head honcho Mark Swinney and pick his brain about his memories of how he came to work with some More Paramedics. So Mark, I'm just wondering, what are your memories of how you came to sign the band back in 2001 after hearing their Halloween gig demo tape?
3 of them were in a band called M. Laugh and knew they were robots, and I thought that they were brilliant. They released their first Red EP, or self-titled, whatever it's called, I thought was amazing. And I used to go and see them quite a lot at the Thick Inn in Derby, which at the time did loads of like punky. There's a really good scene there, and they did loads of gigs. Absolutely loads of bands went through that pub. And I, at the time, was running a directory review website for punk, UK punk bands called UK Bass, and I went to see None of Whom Do Their Robots to review the gig, and they had a tape that they were talking about on the merch desk. Now I hadn't heard of More Paramedics, I wasn't aware of the gig that they played. I just said, oh, what's that? Oh, it's our side product. How much is it? 50p? For 50p I might as well give it a go. So I bought it, and I got home and played it, and I kind of reminded me that big fan of Ringworm's first album, The Promise. Kind of, it kept that grittiness that I hadn't heard for a long time in that kind of metal thing, and I thought it was awesome. The tracks on there were just really good. So I emailed the email address that was on the lining notes and said, look, I really like this. I wasn't really exactly sure what it was, and I didn't really know the guys a great deal, and none of them knew they were robots. But I just emailed and said, do you fancy doing an album? They emailed back and, well, it's going to be a one-off gig, but I suppose we could. And it kind of went from there. It was the singer from the Robots actually recorded them, I think, in like a basement in Leeds for the first album. And that's how it happened, basically. It was just a bit of a fluke, good timing. I liked it. They went for it. Something that, off the back of that, well, you know the history of it. From then on, it just went, well, the first album went down really well, and the second album, I think the first album went down really well with the scene. Kind of semi got picked up by the magazines, but when Hallowed and Heathen came out, it just rocketed them to supporting Offspring and playing leads, and it was just, I remember going to see, I think it was second on at Download in the big tent.
I was in the crowd actually there, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember standing there, and I stood there, and we went quite early because I was with the band, and I went to stand. I didn't go on stage or stand, I just wanted to just be in the crowd, and I was standing with a few people, like their PR agent, and I was with a few other people. And we were like, oh, there's not many people in this tent. And then we were chatting, we turned around, the tent was packed, and it was about people dressed up as zombies. It was absolutely awesome. But yeah, it's kind of, that's kind of how it happened. It was just me picking up their demo tape, thinking it was awesome, and emailing the guitarist.
Did you expect the band to blow up as much as they did around the time of the Hallowed and the Heathen?
Never have any expectations. Just release stuff that I liked. At the time I had an okay job, it was kind of a hobby. I haven't got any children or wife, so I put all my spare money into the record label. So if I liked something, I released it. And that's basically what In at the Deep End was always all about, just a hobby really. At the time it was being run from my attic bedroom in a small village in Nottinghamshire. So it never has been any more than that. So I never wanted to be any more than that. I never wanted to turn into an earache or a whatever, just something that I just wanted to do because I loved the music. But yeah, I thought Hallowed and Heathen to do amazing. I was quite lucky that I released that and November Come and Fight almost exactly at the same time, and both of those bands were really big in the scene, which really helped the label have a certain amount of respect. The magazines paid attention, obviously, as well. So I'd have a release in the magazine, you'll be happy to review it. A smaller label, a label my size, say that didn't have that, would maybe struggle to get them in Kerrang and stuff like that. Because back in the day, even when Feast of the Fallen came out, there was fanzines like Fracture things like that really mattered, and you needed to get in there to those fanzines, but those kind of, with the web coming along, stuff, those fanzines kind of fell to the wayside. And then obviously digital sales came, and to tell you the truth, digital sales kind of like was the beginning of the end for me, because I like making something and taking a lot of effort to get the inlays right of the CDs and everything like that. And when it's just one picture and then there's the music, I mean, I think it's great that bands can control their future and not to have the record label or anything like that. But it also means that there's 1,000,001 clones off the back of instant success. So, going back to, I don't know, I thought the album would do well. I remember pressing a few. Normally I would only press 1,000 records and then sit on them. I've still got them from the early days. But then More Paramedics, I definitely pressed a lot of that Hallowed and Heathen, and the first lot sold through. So, I did expect it to do well because the band were doing well, and let's face it, Hallowed and Heathen's an awesome album. We struggled with the artwork, but the artwork could have been a lot better. It was 1,000,001 compromises with that. But I remember we got a guy in that done some work for someone else, and we thought he was really good, and he ended up being really quite poor. And what he did the album cover, but it wasn't what we wanted. We wanted better than that, but we had to. It was in the last minute we had to bite the bullet and go with it. So, but it's probably iconic to everybody. But to us, it was a bit like, I remember it being a bit of a hassle. I don't know if you've got the 50th release that I did with Gallows and people like Feed the Rhino playing More Paramedics. I sorted out the artwork for that with Dan Mumford, and I really enjoyed doing that artwork. And I think that was probably, next to The Awakening, probably the best artwork that we did for them, because The Awakening was done by a guy called Stefan Kaplinsky, who is, him and his brother were massive in the Games Workshop, you know, all that arty stuff. They used to do a lot of art for Games Workshop, so that's where he came from. Do you know that there's all the members of the band are on that cover? If you look through the cover, each member of the band is actually on there. Right on the top, hidden at the top, is the bassist. That's the giveaway, but all the rest of the band are actually in the cover. They're actually hidden in the cover. Going back to your question, I expected to do well, and I don't know if I expected to explode as much as it did. Sadly, kind of to the detriment of And None of Them Knew Their Robots. I think that is a fair comment. I think if there was no More Paramedics, then I think And None of Them Knew Their Robots would have been a lot bigger than they were. And I still think that they were an awesome band. They ended up doing a small EP with me, which sounded like Minor Threat, which I thought was amazing. But and that sold quite quickly. I flew out the door. I only ever wanted to press 1,000 of that, so it would be quite limited. So this is a shame, but not for the guys in More Paramedics.
Okay, well, I've asked the band this, so I'm going to ask you too. What is your favourite More Paramedics release and why?
First one, because it was probably my first, not success, but the first one that went really well. I mean, the Beach one did pretty well, but that one was probably the first one that really did do well. I think Barless, my first release, I think that was probably my first proper full-length album that I did, as well. The others were EPs and mini-albums. Hallowed and Heathen will always have a big part in my heart. I mean, this is such a great album, really. But there's been lots of amazing album too, but I think probably Hallowed and Heathen number 1, Feastful number 2, and then The Awakens number 3. That's how it's go. Not because it's worse, it's just memories. A lot more memory. The band split up, I think, a little bit prematurely, but after Awakens come out, and that kind of like could have been pushed a little bit more. Blood Fever's a great song, it's a fun song, it's a party song, so it's a shame, but yeah, so there's my answer. I love them all, but I'm not talking about the albums, I'm talking about the memories the albums bring back, and that's the kind of like order I would put it in.
Roll.
another kind of standard question, but I think with around 10 years hindsight, you might have some cool memories you want to share. So what would you say is your proudest moment as a member of More Paramedics?
There's probably a couple of them, really. I mean, the first time we played Download, well, the only time we played Download, it was the first time we actually played a festival. And we got there. I think it's fairly safe to say that we were quite nervous. I was quite nervous. We're all not wanting to let on that we were quite nervous. So we're all kind of puffed up and walking about and like, oh, this is all fine. But even despite that, that was by far the biggest thing we would have ever have done. You know, we'd played like to a couple of hundred people at Joseph Well in Leeds, and all of a sudden there's thousands of people waiting behind this curtain. I mean, it wasn't Live Aid, but it was pretty big for us. I remember absolutely nothing about the gig, but I just remember thinking that we were a unit at that point. We were 4 lads who had come from an underground punk scene, never expected to do very much, and suddenly we were out there and we were a gang together. It was us against the world, and that I think is probably, the proudest moment. When I saw footage of Sam on Kerrang TV during his set and some photos of us doing it, it was like, yeah, that is something that to be quite proud of, to be honest. The other things are things like when we did the live BBC thing, also terrifying, managed to get through that all right, but that was great fun. And then when we played Leeds Festival, I remember there was just one song, God knows what song it was, but there was a circle pit around both pillars of the tent, and there was just this dust storm kicked up by it, and it was like nothing I've ever seen before, and I was making it happen, really. And a couple of our friends were stood behind us and were just looking at me like going, what on earth is going on? And it was just things like that, things that you would never have dreamed of in a million years, but which were unbelievable and incredible to say you were there and enjoy it.
Proudest moment as a member of SMP, I think it's probably when we played with the Misfits, because the Misfits really started the genre of horror punk. I mean, there are some other bands that you could say came before, but the Misfits really defined the kind of combination of punk music and horror imagery in a lot of ways. And yeah, we played with a version of the Misfits, which was Jerry Only from the original Misfits, the bass player, plus Des Cadena from Black Flag on guitar, plus Marky Ramone on drums. So basically, to me, as a kind of punk rock fan, you can't get a lot better than that in terms of the people you're playing the gig with. Those guys are where the whole genre that we were doing came from. So it was just mind-blowing to do that. What a super group. And that was really cool.
Unknown Radio.
Our principal aim is to feed, is to devour as many kilos of warm, pink-living brain meat as we can. And I guess to spread our message until it engulfs the whole surface of the earth.
And what is the message?
You are going to fucking die! Get into this other dirt, running with the great north, carrying under the black sun, colorless, nowhere to run, and down from the line, look down at this bunch of die, from all of the thing we cry, under and blind, there's the voice of warning and the nothing to see, the method of the time when the wicked dead are touching with an endless grin, get up and slave the storm and they will find no relief. I'm down to understand where an hollow soul double jogging with the third that will never cease. The division, crypto goods, down to wonder, let me earth, fucking vision with a slave, and the time leave from a grave, and sounds of the light, and none of this make them die, and none of this they may cry, when they're not blind.
By 2005-2006, the band had found themselves performing on much bigger stages at Download Festival, Reading and Leeds, plus Damnation Festival. They had by now toured alongside Avenged Sevenfold, The Offspring, Tiger Army and The Misfits, not to mention headlining a bunch of successful tours. The band also appeared on the BBC Three pilot show Gorilla Gig Live, presented by Zane Lowe. Everything was looking as promising as it could for the Undead Thrashers, but circumstances were what they were and the band called it a day under quite mysterious circumstances at the time in October 2007, playing their final show at Joseph's Well in Leeds on Halloween. As a side note, one thing I will mention about creating this episode is how hard it's been to choose a playlist. Being a long-time fan, I was spoilt for choice, as I don't think you guys really made a bad song, so I'll put it to you, Sam, to pick your favourite SMP song.
I'm going to say Zombie vs. Shark as my favourite. The guitars are absolutely ripping. It's super fast. I'm a big fan of the fast stuff. You've got to love a song called Zombie vs. Shark. I'm pretty proud of the lyrics, actually. They're pretty cool. And the vocals, the speed of the vocals, I love the chords in the chorus as well, and how I managed to put the vocals over that. So it's just an absolute belter.
Okay, here comes the question that has been on most fans' lips. What caused the band to originally dissolve back in 2007?
The actual sort of cause was that I think Sam was getting a job as a lecturer somewhere away from Leeds. We were all living in Leeds obviously at the time, and he was getting a job further away, so it was basically probably time to call it quits. Also, it was sort of perfectly timed in terms of the arc of it all. You know, we'd done 3 albums. No thrash band does more than 3 good albums. We'd have just been churning out Sent Anger if we'd carried on. Martin will be very disappointed to hear me slag off Sent Anger. So, you know, we'd done the 3 albums, we'd done 6 years of it, and Halloween was approaching, so hey, it was a perfect opportunity to sort of tie it up in a bow. So that was it really. There was no acrimony, there was no falling out. I mean, how could there be? We're still and will remain great friends and always have been. So it was just a kind of way to tie it up, really. Decided that it was probably better to leave now than outstay your welcome and everybody gets sick of all that nonsense that you brought with you.
So I have to confess that one major thing in the band breaking up was me quitting. I guess at the time, we'd been doing it for 6 years. We'd done 3 albums, all of which I thought were really good. And I thought, in a way, I'd kind of achieved what I wanted to with the band. Like, we'd made a mark, we kind of got noticed a bit, we'd had a lot of fun, we'd made 3 records, and also at the time I just finished a PhD and I was starting to look seriously for work, so that played into it. And also I was starting to get a little bit over the kind of physical exertion of that style, that vocal style, which was kind of defining for the band in some ways, but was very, really hard work, like doing that, getting drunk and shouting your head off, like at least once a week for 6 years, like gets a little wearing after a while. So it's not a very rock and roll answer, but that's my angle on the answer anyway. I thought we'd achieved a good amount and it was time to quit while we were ahead, really.
Here is the second part of my telephone chat with Mark from In at the Deep End Records. I always really loved the Tales Told by Dead Men split the band did with the Zombie Apocalypse. Could you give us a bit of background to how that came to be?
I came across that band and I just messaged him and said, do you fancy doing a split? A zombie band from US and a zombie band from UK, thinking it would help both bands. Obviously, Zombie Apocalypse had been on like the side offshoot of Revelation Records, and they were shy of Hallowed members in them. So I thought, well, you know what, I'll do good. And I thought the actual song Tales Told by Dead Man or whatever, it's absolutely brilliant. That is something completely different, and that little Slayer riff in there. This is absolutely awesome. I just love that song. But some more Paramedics tracks are as good, if not better. They're probably the best stuff they wrote is on that thing. The guy that did the artwork for that is a guy that does a load of artwork for Napalm Death and stuff, and also the singer for a band called Deviated Instincts.
Ah, okay, cool.
Really big back in the day, so they get us a little bit of background to that as well.
Now that the band have been split up since 2007, what do you think the band's legacy will be, and how do you think they'll be remembered?
People like you remember them. I guess it's just nice for me to think that I'd released something that I didn't have. Obviously, I only had let's say an administrative role in it, but it's nice to think that my help to let a band let their creativeness out there stuck with the people. I think that's about all I've got, really. Whether they do something or not is so many bands come back and do a really poor job of it. I don't think Duncan would write a bad song, to tell you the truth, but whether people want to hear the old stuff or hear the new stuff is a different matter. Whether the young kids remember the band or not is a different matter.
Yeah, this is true. I mean, I think a lot of the fan base is probably around about my age now, if that remembers them from that time, so going on like 30 to 35.
I think that would you want to hear a new song, or would you want them to play the Zombie Crew instead? That's the question. The thing about them was, at the time, especially when A Feast of Fallen came out, it was like nobody was doing that at all. You know, they played the BBC Three show once, this pilot show, and I remember playing that, and I remember the cameraman being really excited because every other band's management had pinpointed exactly which shots they needed and which you need the guitar in for this amount of seconds, and you need the singer, I think it was Jack White's off a band or whatever it was, in for this time, and then they were just released on Send More Paramedics and they could do what they liked. I can remember them being really excited about that. Second or third time I ever saw Send More Paramedics, it was the Old Angel in Nottingham, and this was when I think A Feast of Fallen had just come out, and there was quite a lot of people there, and they used to have a fake head that they used to pretend to eat brains from, but I think it was pink grapefruit they used to eat from it. And they threw it up in the air and it hit me on the head. I was recording, I think there's a video on YouTube that I recorded, and you can see my shudder as I get hit by this fake head. Another thing, this guy wanted to do a video, but I think I gave about £1,000 towards it, but he was a really big name and stuff in it. And you never seen the light of day because the guy had a complete breakdown as he was editing it, and we've never seen it. We all dressed up as zombies, and we filmed it in Leeds. So we all got made up, and then we went for lunch in this restaurant, walking down the road and almost stopping cars in like full, proper professional zombie makeup. Basically, I was trying to attack a bloke that was dressed up as an American footballer, so I think it was kind of like zombies against sporty American types, kind of like doing that kind of thing. And then he pulled his helmet off and threw it in the air, and that hit me on the head and almost sent me uncussed. So I don't have much luck with that. But yeah, there's that video out there that no one's ever seen the light of day. It would have been awesome as well. That guy really let us down. He just had a massive breakdown and just disappeared off the face of the earth. So maybe after filming that. That's a pretty they're quite normal, down-to-earth guys. I remember Stu telling me once as drummer that he got really drunk at the 1 in 12 in Bradford one time and woke up in a flower bed as commuters were walking by him. That's about the most rock and roll thing I can remember. If I went to see him, we'd just be in the backstage chatting. It was nothing rock and roll at all. So, I think that's about it. Unfortunately, I haven't got anything really interesting. It was just really nice being with the guys. I always look forward to going and seeing them and spending some time with them. So other bands, not so much. With them, it was always a pleasure. I was kind of just a person that enjoyed music, that thought they were great and just wanted to release their records at the end of the day. So I don't think that they'd come back and say I was a big record label boss. I don't think they'd ever say that either. If they are, then you want to relook at what they're saying. I was trying to help them as much as possible. I never ever signed them for more than one album. They always came back, and I always appreciated that. All right, mate. Sorry, then.
Yes, so, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you taking the time out to answer my questions.
Oh, no problem at all. No problem at all.
Guys, it's time to party. Feeling fucked up since I got that bite. What in hell was eating that fucking guy? Sweating like a killer in this horrid night. Feelings of foreboding stalking through my mind. Scratching at this freaking itch in my flesh. My brain is gonna bust out my skull. I feel like death, feel like crawling out of my skin. Layer and wait for the nightmare to begin. Now it's getting worse, I'm starting to twitch. Frosted at the mouth like a son of a bitch. Stay the fuck away, that light's too bright. The way I'm feeling now, well, I must have died. Burning like wildfire in my veins. Some of the things I'm seeing now should not have names. My sickness puts in the burn. Tasting of a getting of a terrifying loss of blood. Blood fever, blood fever. Blood fever, blood fever. Blood fever, blood fever. Blood fever, blood fever. Driven wild by unholy thirst. Smell of blood making me go berserk. Brain no inflame with unceasing rage. Come here, my little darling, and I'll eat your face. Fuck this shit, I'll take all you fuckers on. Clamoring and raving like a human dog. Never felt so dead, but I never felt so alive. That shit is blowing my fucking mind. Blood fever, blood fever. Blood fever, blood fever. Blood fever, blood fever. Blood fever, blood fever.
I was fortunate enough to catch you guys at the 30 Days of Night 10th anniversary all-dayer back in April 2014. I think you played a couple of one-off shows at that time. So how did it feel to receive such a warm and fevered welcome after 7 long years away?
It was fantastic that people were into it. It was always fantastic that people were into it, and it was wicked when we came back and people were, mad for it, and there were all these people who, God knows how old they were when we were originally playing, but they were probably about 10 or something. It was just really cool that they made the effort to come out. Really awesome that people enjoyed the band. And not everybody would do a comeback gig and get that opportunity, so it's really, really cool. Thank you for coming, everyone.
It was lovely. It was bloody lovely. It was odd in the sense that muscle memory was still sort of there. I still vaguely remembered how everything went. Equally, there were songs where I just thought, why did we choose to go to that and do this? And that doesn't make any sense at all. But it was great, basically, to be back in the room with everybody and playing and having a laugh. And then when we got to the gigs, they were great. They were absolutely brilliant. We played a sort of warm-up show at a place in Leeds, sort of low-key-ish one on the Friday, and then played the 30 Days of Night show on the Saturday evening, both of which were brilliant, both of which quite different. You know, the low-key one was this low-key, sweaty affair, just like it had been back in 2003. The one on the Saturday was a bit more like it had got towards the end on slightly bigger stages and what have you. Both of them were great fun, and really nice that everybody seemed to know us and seems to know all the words and seemed to appreciate us old fogies trying to do it again. And we played another one-off gig the week after or 2 weeks later in London at the Barfly. Again, just great, because we always had a great time in London. Lots of people were so generous in terms of looking out for us down there, and it was nice to see lots of familiar faces who'd made the journey and play those gigs. So it was just absolutely lovely to get on stage, play those songs again, and just relive the good times.
They kill for one reason. They kill for food. They eat their victims.
To die. Any of them. And one will rip us apart.
Arising from the heart of darkness, mongrel descendants of your cry, blood-covered masks like savage totems. We shall be colonized. Unfeeling luster of those burned out eyes, dehumanized.
Very simple one next. What are you guys doing at the moment? Are you still making music? And if you are, feel free to plug it.
At the moment, I'm a teacher. I'm an English teacher now. I've got sort of pipe dreams about doing music again in the future. I fiddle around at home on various things. Play a tiny bit of very, very bad attempts at jazz improvisation with some friends on the trumpet, which I used to play in school. Yeah, so that's kind of the extent of my musical activity now. Maybe one day again, we shall see. And I am also writing what is probably about my fourth or fifth attempt at a dystopian science fiction novel. Not zombies, I'm afraid, but definitely a dystopian future. I've been working on this kind of thing for years and years, and it'll probably be out shortly after civilization collapses, around about 2050 or so, at the rate it's going. I should also mention, just for the sake of banging on about myself, a couple of other bands I've been in since More Paramedics. The Emergency, which was a kind of very obscure post-hardcore band from Leeds, and then Psyvoid, which was another thrash band I ended up joining with some guys from The Plight and other bands. And we made an EP, which was basically the same gambit as SMP, recycling film ideas in a thrash lyric. They made some good music, and it was fun to do that. It was fairly brief, but it was fun.
At the moment, the current band I do is a band called The Lock and Keys, which is like a punk rock band, just a three-piece, sort of hot water music-y, Sammy-ammy kind of melodic, gruff punk rock, really. It's funny that, you know, I used to be an absolute devotee of bands like Husker Du and what have you when I was a kid, and I can see why the three-piece works, because everybody's got their own little sonic area, and you just deal with that, and that's fine. And we're just old fogies, all been in other bands, and every couple of weeks we get together to play and have a bit of a giggle. And it is not stressful, and it is not difficult what I choose to play, which is how I like it. So that's what I do. Straight after More Paramedics, I did a band called Gentleman's Pistols. In fact, I did the More Paramedics final gig on the Saturday in 2007, and then I did the Gentleman's Pistols first gig, or my first gig with Gentleman's Pistols on the Sunday. So I literally went from one to the other. Effectively, they had already done an album, and they needed a drummer because their drummer had just left. And I was fortunate enough to jump in there, which is great because More Paramedics had played with Gentleman's Pistols quite a lot at various gigs in the past. And I remember watching them and thinking, God, I wish I was the drummer in that band. And lo and behold, I became the drummer in that band. So we did a couple of albums, did a variety of tours post More Paramedics. Now on one might call indefinite hiatus. We've all got married, we've all got kids or cats or God knows what else. So we live the sort of mid-40s suburban dream at the moment. Bill, the guitar player from Gentleman's Pistols, is also in Carcass, so he's often doing that, being away. He frequently will send me a text saying, how are you doing? What are you doing? And I'll be like, well, I'm watching Homes Under the Hammer while eating a dairy milk, and he'll reply saying, oh yeah, I'm supporting Anthrax in Rio. So all right, yeah, that's good. So that's it really. Just now and again, it's quite nice to keep your hand in. And Gentleman's Pistols may return at some point, but for the time being, it's perfectly fine to just lie on the sofa watching Homes Under the Hammer for me.
Everything is not under control. forced to confront at every moment the reality of their own imminent demise. Choking, they stumble through a half-death of strange unease, where phantoms loom at every turn. The worst fears of humanity have suddenly, terrifyingly, come to life.
I'm going to take this one directly from the More Paramedics lyric book. Now it's nearly 2025 and the awakening is almost upon us. Exactly how fucked are we? You can be as serious or humorous as you want with this.
God knows, to be honest. I think these things go in phases. I think people get very riled, say everything is doom and gloom, when actually it's probably alright. You know, people will probably be fine, people will get on with it. And the more things swing one way, they always swing back. I remain relatively optimistic for humanity on this particular point in time. So hopefully we're not fucked. If there is a zombie apocalypse, I'm just going to do like Bill Murray in Zombieland and just put the makeup on and just assume that they'll think I'm one of them.
I guess the zombies thing was always a good metaphor for a lot of different things, and about problems of modernity, problems of global capitalism, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I mean, it kind of feels a bit like we are a bit fucked at the moment in terms of some of the people that we've got in charge of our democracies at the moment. Some of the people who are in charge in other countries as well. I mean, they're just nightmares, aren't they? I mean, at this stage, are we fucked? I mean, we still have ostensibly democratic, highly organised, technological societies throughout most of the globe. I mean, the kind of apocalyptic zombie imagination very easily goes to, you know, dystopian post-apocalyptic scenarios. And I guess, you know, climate change, climate crisis, combined with human overpopulation, combined with failure to turn away from dependence on fossil fuels, on continual economic growth, you know, could end up with us being really quite fucked. And I mean, civilizations do collapse, and that's a kind of typical dystopian trope, cliche, probably. But you know, things can break down quite easily. The thing that realistically sort of worries me is the idea of climate crisis driving political instability, but also particularly problems with food security. Like if we have like bad harvests, if climate change drives bad harvests, then you know, politics could very, very easily get more extreme. We've already got climate change sort of driving large-scale migration and the kind of horrible reactionary backlash that can lead to. But think about, you know, a future where resources are much more scarce and where countries, nations, organisations are prepared to take very drastic actions to secure access to them. You know, it could get really, really bad. So I guess I just hope that people can keep being as kind and positive as they can, and you know, in certain places it won't be as bad as it could be. I find it very easy to imagine quite scary Dark Age style futures, really, considering the kind of completely bloated situation of modern industrial globalized capitalist economies that we've got. But I'm a dad now, so I really don't want to believe that. It's that typical cliche. Please, 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 let's not have a zombie apocalypse, basically.
Way rather waste than screaming through
Okay, last question. It's been 12 years since you guys called it a day. What do you hope or think the band's legacy will be in the history of metal or music in general when all is said and done?
I don't really tend to think of myself as a very metal person. I tend to think more in terms of punk. In terms of the history, I don't think we really did anything massively new. I mean, crossover thrash was a thing in the 80s, so we were just kind of doing a version of that, really. So musically, like, what did we change? I don't know, not very much. In terms of legacy, what I think hopefully we achieved is just to pass on the sense of excitement, enthusiasm that we had for punk music, metal music, fast, angry rock. Just pass that on, get people excited about that. That's really it. Hopefully people liked it. I think some people did like it. Thank you to them. It was really good fun.
I imagine we'll be a footnote best, but that's fine. We had at the time and remain with very little expectation of us being remembered in the history of metal or of anything, to be honest. However, I think that it would be very nice for some young punk or some young metalhead who's getting into things who might just, his older brother hands him a CD saying, oh, do you remember this lot? You should listen to this lot. They sounded a bit like Slayer. And who knows, in 10, 15, 20 years' time, a couple of people might go, oh, yeah, I remember them, or that were so obscure that we might be some cool name to drop. That, I think, is probably wishful thinking. But it would be awfully nice if somehow the baton was passed for people listening to us. That's what any person in a band hopes, I think. You always hope that it will last and people might still talk about it in the future. That would be lovely. But other than that, I think it stands on its merits. It was done because we liked hanging out with each other and, we achieved our aims.
Dig on these immortal vibes, people. There is nothing more to fear. New horizons have opened up. Those of you listening to the sound of my voice know what I mean. This is now. The new world and the new cycle have begun. For everyone, this is the year 0. So there's lots of work to be done. I'll dedicate my next number to all of the undead around the world. And listen to it good.
Ready to fight
You've been listening to Into the Unknown Radio. This episode was written and somewhat presented by Dan P. Gratitude goes out to Sam Behelmouth Francis, Stuart El Diablo Dobbins, Duncan Medico Hall, and Martin X Undead Hare of More Paramedics, Mark Swinney of In at the Deep End Records, and special mentions for added ambience and atmosphere go out to Stuart's squeaky chair. You can still pick up the band's entire discography from the In at the Deep End online store. For more information, visit iatde.com. The band themselves still have an active Facebook page. Send no flowers please. Sign the book of condolence over at facebook.com/Send More Paramedics UK. And of course, if you enjoyed what you've heard, you can follow what I do by searching for Into the Unknown Radio podcast in most search engines and listening by your preferred methods. Special shout-outs go out to And None of Them Knew They Were Robots, The Nothing, The Wireless Stores, Raw Deal, Psyvoid, The Minor Fall, The Emergency, The Dead Anyways, Gentleman's Pistols, Albzagle, The Lock and Keys, 30 Days of Night Records and Jamie Farrell, This Is Menace, Redemption TV for that one soundbite that I stole, Hellraiser Records in Wakefield, always support your local record store guys, and of course the Zombie Crew. As a final note, I just want to say that it has been my pleasure to cover More Paramedics and talk with the guys. They've been one of my favourite bands for going on 15 years now. I've managed to see them live multiple times during that period, and the band remain a firm favourite of mine to this day. One thing I noted when I was talking to people generally about this episode is the excitement that appeared on their faces when I mentioned who this episode's band was, a testament to the band's enduring legacy and the fun memories a lot of people have of the greatest Zombiecore band of all time. The Zombie Crew will never ever die, at least not on my watch. So until next time guys, thanks for listening.
Hi, this is Stuart Dobbins, aka El Diablo of More Paramedics, and you're listening to Into the Unknown Radio. Testing, 1, 2, 3, come in rubber ducky. I mean, I really should say Return of the Living Dead, because I have watched that to absolute death. We have watched that to absolute death. As anybody who's listened to our records will note, there's more than a few samples from that record, more than a few references. I mean, oh my God, we've absolutely rinsed that film. How about, hi, this is Stuart Dobbins, also known as El Diablo. No, let's start again. Hi, this is Stuart Dobbins, aka El Diablo of More Paramedics, and you're listening to Into the Unknown Radio. It's a bit more metal, isn't it? And that, Dan, is probably it, I think. Hopefully I haven't made a tit of myself and you can hear all this okay, but any problems, let me know. Thank you very much, bye!